Hello, my name is David Cebreros, and this right here is going to be for my assignment 2 on Mesoamerican religion. To begin, the Mexica were a very religious group, to say the least, basically. The Mexica were really devoted to their gods, basically, kind of like how they're devoted to like service and or how they're devoted to like just work in general for their whole community, basically. Um, the Mexica's lives kind of revolved around cycles, basically. They were more so like kind of like yin and yang in a sense, but they didn't have yin and yang back then. They had something similar to like basically male, female, near, far, drought, rain, and then their bigger ones, which was life and death. Life and death was one of their key ones, only because they were they believed heavily in rebirth. Rebirth was very engraved in their culture. They believed that in order for one to be reborn, one must die. It's something that they can't avoid. Like as stated in our lecture for Professor Estrada, um, it stated that they believe that life is always uncertain. However, death is always certain, which they make the most out of, basically. They were a very polytheist group. They had many gods that they basically worshipped. And it was more so kind of like a family thing, right? They were all linked, basically. They all have a story to tell. Kind of like this one right here. A lot of their gods were male, about 66%, give or take. One of those being, and I always butcher it, I do apologize, Tlaloc, which is right here. Don't know if you can see him. Tlaloc right here, he is known as the rain god, or he can also be referred to as a water deity, basically, how they referred to, which is kind of represented in that turquoise blue that you see here. He was basically also identified through these unique fangs that he would have, kind of like that off white and red that you will see here. Also accentuated by the whole yellow aesthetic that he has going on. This right here is a pot. These are one of the offerings that they would give, which you can find located at the top of the Templar Mayor, over there in the top there, because they believed they had heavy importance in Tlaloc. They believe that he brings up the fertilization and rain of the land, kind of like good props, basically. But in a sense, they also feared him. In, of course, the temple, they had a bunch of offerings. Like I said earlier, this pot right here that we see was one of those offerings. But they also held much like turtle shells, seashells. They even had many, many things that would reside like in the ocean, even like fish skeletons and sort, basically. And he was very revered. He was basically seen as the one who basically improved their lives, but he was also very feared. One identifier is their priest, which died at the temple. Here, kind of has those similar aspects of Tlaloc. He has the fangs right there that's used to identify Tlaloc, and also the big eyes. Those big eyes are a key identifier of Tlaloc, one of his trademarks per se, while still accentuating that turquoise blue color to represent that rain. He was revered, but also feared due to the fact that yin and yang, like I said, basically he could bring about rain and fertilization, but at any point in time, they believe that he can also bring about drought and hunger. They had to be very, very careful with how they went about Talala. They really, really persevered in those as far as like the gifts goes, and as far as like the rituals. Then he resided right at the top of the Templar Mayor, right next to his brother, which again I do have to apologize if I butcher the name. It was Huitzlapochtli, which he was the war god, also seen as the sun god, fire deity, sort of. Speaking of that, we'll refer to another god here, which is close to him, because not only did they have males, they also had as well female gods, about 34% as well. Here we see Colchique. Colchique was Huitzilopochtli's, or so Huitzilopochtli's sister. So, as we can see right here, we have the red right here, snakes, kind of symbolizing blood. Why is that basically? So, like it's referred to in the Khan Academy video of Colchique, there's a story behind these. So, this red blood, or this represents blood basically. In the story, her mother, which so apologize, I might butcher it, Kotlike, she was cleaning the temple when suddenly a ball of feathers fell from the sky and basically fell into her robe and impregnated her. When she got impregnated, her daughter, Bolshike, basically here was she was angered. She gathered about 400 apologies, but as it is stated in the Khan Academy video of Bolshike, basically the story goes that when her mother became impregnated, she rallied up 400 of her brothers and sisters. 400, which is a lot, if anything, a lot of family. Couldn't imagine, but but basically, she rallied them to go ahead and send an attack to her mother. However, one who was against her was her brother, Huitzilopochtli. And when Huitzilopochtli found her at the top, he ran to his mother's side to defend her as the war god. And the first thing that he did was behead her, as we can see with these rigid kind of cuts that you see right here. She was beheaded, and as the story goes, he carried her body from the top of the temple and threw her down all the way down at the temple, where she landed and her body became dismembered. As you can see, her arms right here, arms, skulls signifying death, even her limbs right here. And basically here, as we can see, the red on the sides represents the pool of blood from the fall. And also worth noting, that place where she did fall resides at the bottom of the temple. She still resides at the bottom of her temple. This stone is at the bottom, signifying her fall, which is also on the side of Huitzilopochtli, who went ahead and threw her to the bottom of the temple, basically. There are many gods, there are many stories. Each have their individual stories, each have their individual powers. There's even an earth god. There's way, way more. But basically, they worship, these are one of their heavily revered gods that they had, and ones that they were very devoted to, ones that they shown where they revered them basically, where they took morals and sort. All right, that's gonna wrap it up for my assignment 2. I thank you again, Professor Estrada, and you have a good day.